Sleep apnea is a sleeping disorder that can be very dangerous. You can stop breathing for a while. This story is about a girl who thought she had sleep apnea, so she started recording herself in her sleep. When she told her story to the media, it went viral. Today, we are sharing her story and what the footage revealed. Unfortunately, sleep apnea runs in my family. I remember family vacations where I considered cashing in all of my allowance money so I could get my own hotel room and not have to listen to the epic snoring battle that was taking place between my parents in the queen bed next to me. I had made it 29 years in life without ever being accused of snoring by any former roommates, boyfriends, or family. However, a few months of regularly waking up, feeling like I was out of breath, with my heart racing along, and having consulted a healthy dose of websites discussing sleep apnea, finally convinced me that the family curse had descended upon me. I went to a doctor so he could examine me. Then I got the diagnosis. I wasn't diagnosed with sleep apnea yet, though. My HMO finance physician, who had an office above a dry cleaner in a part of town that had never even heard of the word gentrification, told me the best and cheapest way to figure out if I had sleep apnea or not would be to record myself sleeping each night for a few weeks, and he could review the tapes and decide. But I had other plans. I thoroughly questioned this method, but my doctor explained to me the other option of coming into a facility to do extensive testing. He assured me videotaping myself would be the easiest and cheapest way. So, I got a camera. I couldn't help but laugh that night when I set up my camera and tripod aimed at my bed like I was going to shoot some kind of low-budget movie, but I figured it was worth it to find out if I had an ailment that would shave years off of my life, and to save some serious money. Then, I hit record. The 3 weeks of filming went by quickly. I was putting in long days at work and pretty much coming home and crashing each night. The only time the filming actually really affected me was one Saturday when I came home drunk, hit record, and then passed out fully clothed on top of the covers. I considered deleting my drunken moment, but figured it might be good to have a comparison to see how getting drunk affected my potential sleep apnea. I left it on there. When I turned in my recordings to my doctor, it took about a month before I was summoned back to my doctor's office to go over the results. Things started out well initially. My doctor told me he didn't think I had sleep apnea and that I had saved thousands of dollars and countless hours of facility testing. But things quickly took a sharp turn. I still remember my doctor casually saying the phrase that completely changed my life. The only time I really ever noticed even tiny disturbances in your sleep pattern was when your boyfriend would come in and out of bed. Huh? I fired back. Maybe you have the wrong video. I don't have a boyfriend. Once the doctor popped in the flash drive and showed me collapsing into my bed, I knew he had been watching the right video. I saw myself lying alone in my bed. But after about a minute of watching me sleep in fast forward, I felt myself go weak when I saw what he was talking about. An hour into the first night of my recorded slumber, a male figure appeared in the field of vision of the camera tall, gaunt, dressed in black. I couldn't get a real read on exactly how the man looked, but he appeared to be white and probably in his 20s or 30s. I felt vomit bubble up to the back of my throat when I watched him stealthily slide on top of the covers on the side of my king-size bed, fold his arms across his chest, and just lie there staring up at the ceiling. "What the f***?" I said, and literally recoiled into my plastic chair. How did I never wake up? Well, I have to say, you are the deepest sleeper I have ever reviewed, my doctor assured me just before I vomited into the trash can. Apologizing, I cleaned it up, and the doctor and I watched the rest of the recordings. Each night followed the same routine. I would go to sleep, and an hour or so later, the man who never gave a good look at his face entered, laid down next to me, and then left just before sunrise. The man never did anything sinister, never anything sexual, never even touched me. And for some reason, it made the whole thing that much worse, to me personally. I took the tapes down to the police station. They were little to no help. The police mentioned that any case without violence would be difficult to do anything about. Every night after this day has pretty much been outright hell. I didn't even go back to my apartment. I had my dad and brother go in there and get my important things and moved into my old room at my parents' house, 15 miles away from my old apartment. But there was still something wrong. Despite my parents' high-tech security system and the family German Shepherd that was now sleeping outside my door, I would be lucky if I could muster a few hours of restless sleep each night. Everything in my life suffered. I could hardly focus at work. I was so tired. My already struggling social life became non-existent, and I had zero trust for any men I met. So I had to forget about dating. So I made a big decision. Things were so bad, I decided the best idea would be to just move. Work was happy to offer me a position in their Atlanta headquarters to try and rejuvenate my life. So after 6 months of persisting torture, I packed up my stuff and headed across the country to move in with my cousin Felicia, who was hell-bent on turning my life around. Then all things seemed to change. Things got better in Atlanta. The anonymity it brought to my life and the distance it gave me from the incident slowly brought me back to life. The cops in L.A. had done pretty much nothing on the case, but they did find out one piece of evidence they shared with my dad and me before I left. It appeared my sleeping partner had been entering my apartment by simply picking my door handle lock with a credit card. This was a tactic I regrettably had done myself before when I was locked out and never really thought about how vulnerable it revealed the security of my apartment was. Then my dad told me something important. My dad had been doing more work on the case than the cops probably were, but he didn't tell me much about it until I reluctantly came home for Thanksgiving. My nerves were soothed by the gin and tonics the two of us had been swigging after our holiday gorging, and I opened up to discuss the painful incident. There were actually security cameras outside of your door in the hallway of your building, my dad said after a long discussion about whether I was comfortable with even talking about the whole thing. Now that you mention it, I do remember that, I said. The idiot cops didn't even look at it, as far as I could tell, my dad groused. But I did. I looked into it. According to your building's manager, they hadn't worked in a couple of years, but they just left them there broken. They got the security company to turn in the old tapes to the cops, but there was nothing showing the guy coming to your apartment at night. But I've been wondering, you said you got into your apartment before by picking the lock with a credit card. Did you ever tell anyone about that? As far as I can remember, no. And if I did, it would have been a close friend. It was literally like 5 years ago when I did that, though. Judging by how furiously my dad started sucking down his drink, I could tell he was onto something. He killed all of the liquid in the glass and spoke up. If it was 5 years ago, those security cameras probably still worked. They would have had to have seen you do it. We both sat there silently for a few moments, soaking in the revelation. My dad started chewing on his gin-washed ice, and I finished the last of my drink. They also would have known that the cameras didn't actually work the past couple of years, I chimed in. We sat there silently for a few more moments before I asked another question. What was the name of the security company? Altero Security's office was tucked into the middle of the endless sun-bleached field of warehouses and factories that was City of Industry, California. The hideous white stucco building the company took residence in looked possibly abandoned. When my dad and I walked up to the heavily barred front door, my dad dialed up the listed extension for Altero's on a filthy little call box next to the door. Without a word from the other end, the box made a muffled noise, and the black-barred door gave a hearty buzz. We entered a dark, stuffy little hallway that smelled like a mix of chlorine and the ghosts of cigarettes. It led us to a thick mahogany door for Altero. I followed my dad inside the office. The inside of the office looked like an episode of Hoarders. Dusty cardboard boxes were stacked all around the lobby like a game of office Jenga. The floor was littered with loose folders and random papers and decrepit-looking office equipment. I watched my dad almost fall on his ass after tripping over a 3-hole puncher. "Hello," my dad called out in a thoroughly annoyed tone. It took a while, but eventually a voice responded behind a dead computer monitor that looked like it was from 1997. "Yes, come in." My dad and I followed the voice up to a front counter, and an elderly woman wearing heavy red eyeshadow, rouge, and bright red lipstick, which made her look a bit like a clown, stood up with her big hoop earrings jangling. She peered at us from behind gold glasses and smacked her lips. "Not sure if you have the right office. We are out of business as of 2 weeks ago." "Oh, no problem," my dad replied. "We were actually just looking to ask some questions." My dad's words sounded distant in my ears. I was distracted by something I saw on the wall next to the woman, a framed portrait plaque. The plaque featured a younger man of about 30 with long black hair, a gaunt white face with sunken eyes, and an unsmiling mouth. There was no denying it was my sleeping partner from the video. I noticed an inscription upon gold below the picture. "Employee of the Month, Scott Lynn." Ma'am, I could barely get the words out. "Where is he?" I pointed to the plaque of Scott Lynn with a wobbling hand, and the woman squinted up at the thing. My heart dropped when she spoke. "Oh, that's Scott. Worked here for years, but he up and left a few months ago to move to Atlanta. I don't know why. He never gave a reason." My dad gulped. I could tell he was going to say something he really didn't want to say. "I haven't been completely honest with you," he said. "There's something I need to show you." The video my dad pulled up on his laptop couldn't have looked more innocent at first. I was watching a trio of preteen boys I vaguely recognized from the neighborhood throw dunks into a swimming pool basketball hoop in a sun-drenched suburban backyard. Russell Miller, you know, from down the street. His dad gave me this video a few months ago. I was about to ask my dad why I would care about Russell Miller and his little buddies holding a pool slam dunk contest, but was interrupted by the bright scene, getting interrupted by a close-up of Russell, breathing hard in the dark of Vaselis. Russell started to talk in between labored breaths. We're egging every house up and down this block. No one is safe, I swear. Not even that big-ass guy down the block with the scary-ass German Shepherd. The video cut to a dark shot of the front of my parents' house, slightly obscured by some bushes that were next to the camera. The sound of young boys panting heavily served as the soundtrack until Russell stepped into the shot with an egg in his hand. The boy snickered. Russell cocked back his arm to launch, and I watched the first couple of eggs splatter just above my childhood bedroom window. He grabbed a couple more eggs out of the pocket of his hoodie and cocked back to launch them. He stopped. "What the fuck?" Russell whispered, and ducked back down behind the camera. "What happened? What happened?" the cameraman asked. "There's someone out there," Russell whispered, with his eyes glued to my parents' house. The camera panned through the brush and focused in on my parents' white house that was shining in the pale streetlight. It took a second for the shot to focus, but my breath disappeared once it did. Standing off to the side of my parents' house, crouching down next to small shrubs, was the unmistakable silhouette of a man. "What the hell is he doing?" the cameraman whispered. Scott turned toward the bushes where the boys were hiding. "Holy sh!" Their voices echoed in the final frames. Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at my dad. He looked guilty, like a dog caught in the trash. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, voice shaking. "I didn't want to make you feel worse," he said quietly. "There's more," he added. "I found out our home security company is owned by the same company Scott Lynn worked for, just under a different name." My stomach dropped. "So he could have tampered with our system." "There was nothing I could do," he muttered. A chill settled in the room. I thought finding out Scott moved to Atlanta was the worst moment, but this was worse, much worse. I'd spent so much time here. What if he hadn't just been outside? Do you think he got inside the house? Scott, a man with no verifiable identity, had been stalking me for months, showing up in the background of social media photos despite claiming to have left town. The police found no records of him, and even the information tied to his alarm system job appeared fake. I began to feel unsafe not only in my own home, but also around my father, who had kept the most disturbing evidence, a video of Scott beside me, hidden. My fear was compounded by memories of my mother's unexplained mental collapse years earlier. With no legal options due to Scott's non-existence on paper, my father hired a terrifying private investigator named Buddy to guard the house. After a comforting dinner and a few strong drinks mixed by my dad, I finally managed to fall asleep only to wake less than an hour later to shuffling outside my door. Alarmed, I grabbed my mace and noticed something odd on the window, a smashed egg. It triggered a hazy memory of hearing thumps the night before, leading to a shocking realization. The video my dad had shown me wasn't months old, it was from last night. As I processed this, shadows appeared under my door again. Then, a whisper, it was my mom incoherently warning me. Her fragmented words, skinny, ugly, black hair, "He is staying," made it clear Scott had been hiding in the house, likely in my mother's off-limits room. I panicked, realizing my phone was downstairs. My mom continued speaking. "He's been in the room days, I think, looking for you." Suddenly, another pair of feet appeared beneath the door. I screamed as chaos erupted, my dad shouting and breaking out of his room, racing down the stairs. My mom's eerie muttering continued outside. "Can't watch you go?" I heard my dad curse downstairs before he bolted back up. "He got out the back door," he gasped. He shoved a cabinet in front of my door. I had to break it down. "Was it Scott?" I asked. "I didn't see, but Buddy's after him now." "You okay to open up?" I unlocked the door. My dad stood there sweating and shirtless with my disoriented mom pacing behind him. I was about to shut the door again when I spotted a crumpled paper in his hand. "What's that?" "Just some trash." "Can I see it?" Reluctantly, he handed it over. It was a torn note written in eyeliner. "I know someday you'll have a beautiful note." That was it. Unfinished, but enough to haunt me for years. Scott must have been interrupted. 3 years later, my mom was doing better, more lucid, remembering things clearly. As for me, I'd moved on too. After that night, we took a chance on a strange but perfect opportunity. A reopened psychiatric facility in Washington State, repurposed into a community for people like my mom and for those who wanted to start over.